Ever wonder what your IT provider isn't telling you? Yeah, we're going there. Welcome to Why It Matters, the show where we expose the IT your business runs on and why it matters. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Why It Matters. I'm your host, Tyler Eccles, and with us this week, as usual, is Joshua Baker, our Chief Technology Officer, and Matt Edge, our Chief AI Design Engineer. And this week, we are going to delve a little bit deeper into AI. And AI has so many facets that I don't even think at this point, as humans, well, maybe a few of us can comprehend the breadth of how AI will touch our lives, right? Today, we're going to talk about how AI touches your business. And we've talked in other podcasts before. Josh, you've given us a lot of information on Copilot. Mm-hmm. But this time we wanted to talk about the difference between AI and, say, automation and or AI and how automation can be used in your business as a whole with AI. And we're going to expand on that a little bit. Josh, before we began, you were just relaying a story, if you wouldn't mind relaying it again, about an article you read.
Yeah, so the article's about IKEA. I wish IKEA was here. I'd be super rad. I don't want to go to Salt Lake for IKEA.
So you could get cheap.
Probably need like $500,000.
You have to put together yourself as you squeal in the living room with parts all over the floor. And where's that little stupid wrench they gave me?
I saw another April Fool's post that it was coming. It's not.
No, that'd be
no IKEA in Boise.
I enjoy that chaos, though.
That's just gives you a reason to drive to Salt Lake.
Yeah. So there's an article about IKEA, how IKEA employed something like 17,000 customer service representatives across the world, ultimately, right?
I didn't realize that was that big.
And how they built in-house artificial intelligence that could accurately answer about 50%. I don't remember the exact percentage. We'll say 50% of the customer service requests that would come in. Which means like the other 50%, you still need a human to intervene and actually deal with those requests or issues or whatever.
Something to reduce their growing FTE issue.
Something to reduce the growing FTE issue, right? Because they're growing like any business would. So many businesses solve issues by throwing additional bodies at the issue, vice refining processes or whatever to actually.
I think that's one of the biggest problems a business has is refining those processes. It's almost like they begin to do things as a business over and over, the same way over and over, and they get used to a pattern, and then they don't want the pattern to change.
Well, you get stuck in your old ways. Yep. Why change something that's always worked? So they built a in-house customer service artificial intelligence model, right? That could answer about 50% of the questions. So what do they do with the half 50%, well, roughly half of their customer service staff, right? So many people are scared that AI is going to replace your job. However, what it really boils down to is how else can those employees be used within a business to generate more revenue? Well, IKEA realized this, right? They relieved about 8,600-ish from memory customer service reps, but they also realized that these customer service reps have a very large in-depth view of what IKEA's full catalog was, right? So instead of terminating these people, they brought up a new branch of business for interior design.
Repurposed.
And they repurposed all of these people that were already trained on the catalog and can already make recommendations because they did that for customer service.
Smart. They spent the time on those employees and the energy to train them.
Correct. So like we all know as business owners how much time and money it takes to actually train employees. And you really don't get an ROI off a brand new, fresh employee for probably 6 to 8 months, depending on what billet they sit in, right? Maybe 12 months, right? Especially like if you're in sales or something, right? So why would you waste your own money and efforts, training these employees, making them competent in your
It's
whatever
a huge expense.
platform, offerings, et cetera, and then only let them go into the unemployed force, so to speak, looking for new jobs, right? I just found it very interesting because it kind of complements some of the mindset that we've discussed about how, there will be jobs that replace individuals, but should that job have really existed in the first place? And then on top of that, you've already developed this individual with a certain skill set and understanding of how your business operates. Why not just repurpose that individual to accomplish else for your business to bring in additional streams of revenue?
You're talking about IKEA, right? It's a huge company. You just said 16,000 something customer service reps. That's great.
Yeah.
That's IKEA. But how does a small or medium-sized business do what you're talking about, whether it's repurposing or skill training AI to do someone's skill set in a job? How does a small business take advantage of that?
Well, in small business, you typically have people that wear multiple hats, right? What if you could take a couple of those hats away? Here's an example. Our own business, our purchasing agent with our business, part of his day-to-day is tracking logistics from what we've purchased, right? And disparate systems sometimes don't necessarily play well together. There's typically not native integrations between.
What do you think our average customer has for systems that they deal with?
What do you mean?
Does that make sense?
No.
So what would our average customer have as far as what we would call LOBs, line of business applications or different things, right? Almost every customer has Microsoft, right? So that's one whole set of tools, whether it's Excel or Word or something that creates documents, and maybe it's SharePoint and there's repository, but then there's also third-party applications that every business has.
Okay.
Maybe you have an ERP system that you run.
I see where you're going with this. Yeah, no, I got you.
Is it two or three or four touch points per client that we're talking about? And by touch points, I mean data points or places where data exists that is information about your business.
Siloed data into silo points instead of, one single conglomerate of information.
I would think every business that we work with has at least two, probably three or four different data locations.
Well, going back to the conversation about throwing FTEs at process problems, businesses do it with technology too, right? So your business ultimately starts running on different platforms that have a necessity within your business, but they don't necessarily communicate with each other, right? So to your point, you have disparate information over here. One type may be over here. You may have another type over here, and then maybe a tertiary type in a different location, right? This kind of dovetails into something that I call context decay, right? And context decay is ultimately you employ intelligent, abled individuals, but people forget. Processes are skipped, things are said, things are tried over time, right? And unless it recently happened, it's not fresh in your mind, which is why meetings occur, right? How many meetings have we been in where it's like deja vu, where we're talking about the same process problem, right?
Same issues.
And it's the same issues, but nothing ever is actually resolved because people forget conversations. They forget.
They get busy too.
Oh, we tried this failed, but then 6 months later, somehow you're trying the exact same thing again.
Right.
Forgetting that you've already tried this and you chose not to go down this path for this reason. You forget, right? Even furthermore, imagine we're having this conversation here, right? And then someone else joins us in this conversation. They have no idea of what we've talked about so far. So now the three of us are going to spend time backfilling information to the additional body to explain where we're at, what we've already talked about, what we've decided, decisions that have been made, and the like, right? So going back to what we're talking about, you have disparate information all over the place, right? If
before you go on to disparate information, I just want to make one quick note. If you're interested in context Decay and how it affects your business. Josh has written a great article. It's on your LinkedIn.
It's on my LinkedIn. Our company profile shared it as well.
Stability Networks, Joshua Baker, CTO, Stability Networks.
Yeah.
If you want to read about context decay, it's a great article. Go read it. It really can help any side of ops in your business.
So it really stems from problems that we've had, right? Because we have multiple systems with different purposes, but each system contains a subset of information and or knowledge that's relevant in making business decisions, but it's all over the place. So how do you correlate between one and the other, right? So that's where, at least in my mind, one of the best use cases that businesses can jump into AI as quickly as possible is aggregating all that information into a single location, right?
So I can tell you, for all of the years of my career, this has been a problem. There's always been a problem with disparate information. And how many times have we done migrations for people over the years? Well, can you take this data from this system and put it into this system? It's always moving data. And every single time you move data from one system to another system, something is lost. Yep. No matter what happens, there's always something lost, because they always say, well, we couldn't export that one field because it doesn't match this field in it, right? So I've seen this problem going on forever. And the way that people have always traditionally approached this problem was very narrow mindseted, meaning all I'm thinking about is this one piece of data here, and how do I get it over into this new application? That's my hardest problem, instead of thinking big picture.
Well, the easiest example really is Copilot, Microsoft Copilot, right? It's great at creating emails and creating, formulas that you can use in Excel,
in Excel
and PowerPoint presentations. But that's like,
and it can be even used as a search engine to search your SharePoint or whatever.
That's like 1,000-foot view, right? And I know we've talked about it and said how good it is. It's great at doing that. And if you are working in Office applications all day, I mean, that's your bread and butter. However,
it's your step in the door.
It's your step in the door, right? It's hey, you should use this, right? Because it helps you reduce time doing basic tasks throughout the day, right? And that's how Microsoft markets it. How Microsoft does not market Copilot is that it really is your business's thought partner, and it's everlasting cognitive memory, right? Because if it has access to information that you and your business have created, you have access to that information, right? Whether that's
even when you might have forgotten it.
Whether that's operating procedures or processes, or maybe meetings that have been recorded and transcribed, or emails or communications within Teams, or things that live in SharePoint, or things that live in OneDrive, right? As long as you have access, right, you have access to previous decisions, because that's what an SOP is, right? We sit in an office, we identify a problem, we realize that we don't have a process or procedure for something. So let's now, real time, while we're recording our meeting, hash out the process, the problems we're trying to solve. And then we use Copilot to take all of the points and all the decisions made and to create an SOP. Now you have an SOP that you've created. You take that SOP and you put it into SharePoint where everyone has access, and now they have access to the same thing, right? So over time, you might start small as a footprint inside of SharePoint or Microsoft in general with all your business information. But as you identify problems, you deliberate, you make decisions, you create, you add what you've created into the brain that is Copilot. And now anyone that has questions on how to do something, or I want to try this, right?
You talk about context decay, and you just mentioned a really cool trick that I think is I say trick, but it's part of the tool itself. In a business, when you're having a meeting, there is so much decay from that meeting. Oftentimes you'll get all these thought people in a room and they're collaborating and they're talking and they're going, but no one has ever in the history of a meeting taken really good notes. Unless you're in court and there's a stenographer there,
Right.
You're not taking. But what you just said was by using AI and recording the meeting, you don't have to think about notes or remembering anything. You can just spew all of this out. And then you use Copilot, right? Which you have been working with our organization to do this. We demand that every meeting is recorded in our organization, and we transcribe those meetings, and we keep those meetings. We use Copilot to sift through that information and create things like here's your deliverables, here's your takeaways, here's meeting notes. We use those from meeting to meeting, and then you mentioned the big thing, which is that information is captured. It's now in a repository, and I can go back to it whenever. I don't have to remember the meeting on the 13th of March. I don't have to remember that, but I do know that maybe there was something valuable in there, and now I can use Copilot to grab it.
Well, from the perspective of meetings, right? Meetings are only accessible to those that are attending the meetings, right? But like we do in our organization, after we've wrapped up a meeting, we create action items from the meeting that need to be completed. And then those action items from the meeting using Copilot, right? Then people have ownership to certain pieces that must be completed to accomplish something, right? And then you take out certain pieces that may need to be processes and procedures, or maybe we need to kick this can down the road because we didn't have the correct people in the room to further discuss a topic.
Or maybe, like you said, we used the meeting to create an SOP. In fact, we actually did this the other day.
Wednesday, we created 2 SOPs from 2 separate meetings based upon issues that have occurred in the last 2 weeks.
And they were the fastest SOPs we ever created, because we just used the knowledge and information we already had and filtered that out and said, create a document of what we discussed.
Well, I look at it from the perspective of, I personally have created hundreds of SOPs, but that's only my input, right? After they're created, others see them and then they get to add their additional input after it's been solidified. But why not include others in the creation process?
Save time. Do it up front.
Like you want to create a sales SOP. Well, sales deals with finance and accounting. They deal with projects. They deal with purchasing. They deal with marketing. They deal with operations. So while you're creating a sales SOP, if you do it by yourself, your SOP now may have gaps between business units, right? To where we do something over here and you want to do something over here. So why wouldn't you just get all the people responsible for making decisions from those business units in a room for 30 minutes, deliberating on something, and then generate it right off the bat?
It's way harder to get somebody to review a document afterwards.
Oh.
And that's been the traditional
100%.
way you do things, right? You create a document and you're like, hey, can you review this? And they go, yeah, I'll get to it. Right. Whereas you're right. Just get them all in the room in the beginning, let people spew, collaborate, and then you have a finished product.
So the quickest way to bridge the gap of minimizing context decay within your organization, if you use Microsoft, is just anyone that needs Copilot 365, get them Copilot 365, right? Because that will give them the information that your organization creates and minimize that forgetfulness in the things you forget to carry forward that are meaningful for business decisions, right? Digressing back to what we were originally talking about having information in disparate systems, right? Larger companies are building purpose-built AI models for reasons, right? We, Matt and I don't know, a year ago, 18 months ago, right? And there's been a couple of iterations just because even we've had issues grasping, like contextually, what do you actually use artificial intelligence for in a business, right? And to Matt's previous point, a lot of people confuse artificial intelligence and automation and which one falls in which bucket, right? So the vision that we had and we came up with is, why don't we have something that is vendor agnostic? Meaning if you use something that exposes a API right? Or has some methodology to communicate with, whether it's a SQL database that it pumps information to, or it's sending things via email or direct tie into API, right? Why don't you build something that as you grow and you change different pieces of data sources, right? Different information sources. Why don't you build something that doesn't care what you're actually using as long as there's a method to get the information out?
So you have something that is similar to what, say, or is what a large organization would have built for themselves.
Correct.
But you've built something that is vendor agnostic and company agnostic.
Correct.
Right? So a partner, an AI thought partner that can assist in any business?
Any business. It's actually a thought partner that is not only vendor and company agnostic, but it's also task agnostic as well. It's a system that's developed with the idea that anything can happen.
So Matt, how many different connecting points, just a guess number, how many connecting points do you think that this application has into our environment? Things like, I'm talking about like Ingram or QuickBooks, or how many of those connectors in our business?
So first off, it comes to you in a blank slate and a communication chat that says, hey, I need to get to know you. What do you do? What are some pain points in your day? It doesn't have any preset connectors, right? It learns about you. You mentioned Ingram Micro. It'll offer, hey, would you like me to build a connector for that? It'll go out.
Because you tell it that you deal with Ingram Micro?
Yeah, you tell it that you deal with the Ingram Micro. It looks and finds all of its data points, finds out it doesn't have a connection to Ingram Micro, offers, you answer, builds Ingram Micro in any sort of endpoints that it thinks you may need. It researches documentation from the vendor's official
So I can tell
sites.
it to build a connector for me.
You know, why don't you were telling Tyler and I a story about how your wife, who's our marketing director, a use case just as a proof of concept. What was she doing? What did you ask her to do?
I asked her just to introduce herself. She walked in with no expectations whatsoever because I hadn't revealed anything about it. It started talking to her and it realized that, some of the things that she uses or some of the things that she needs to do that are sort of annoying. She needs to go out and see what business reviews we have.
So she just started talking about her job.
Yeah, she just started talking about her job, saying what she does. And it ultimately offered a few things to her. Said, hey, would you like me to actually make this easier for you? I can automate this for you. And it ended up not only building a Google API connector and a Google Business connector, but it gave her explicit instructions on what she needs to provide to her IT admin to provide the credentials for the connector. Again, this was blank slate. It was never there. It added the connector for her.
It learned her job role.
It did.
It asked her more questions to be in depth. Then it started trying to make her job better and easier.
Yeah, it did.
Through creating tools?
Right. It created tools that she could then iterate on in the future and say, hey, this isn't how I really want these delivered to me. Can you send them to my Teams channel instead? And now what she's able to see every day or every week, whatever frequency she wants, Google business reviews, or as they come in, a new business review, right? And that's just something that she would have to go out and seek herself, which now...
Well, what she used to have to do before was she would have to log on to Google, look at the reviews that were there because we respond to all of our reviews, right? So she'd have to go in there, look at the reviews, and then do the response without getting any prior notice.
Yeah, and it's so agnostic. She could even say, hey, can you help me draft a response for the business review before you send it to me? And every time, because it adds it to its cognitive memory, every single time it would repeat that process.
So it can look at the review, write a reply to it, and then notify her to modify, change the reply.
And that's a point of agnosticism is traditionally you would need to hire somebody to create an application that does that for you.
That's the thing. a lot of businesses have had this problem over the years. This is a very common problem. How do I increase automation in my business to save time, right? This is a time issue. Well, traditionally in the past, you had to outsource to somebody. You would call a programming company. They would come in, they would evaluate your environment. They would do all these things over weeks and months. They would look at your process and then write you a custom application. This does it that quickly? How long did it take?
Her conversation was 5 minutes. It already had a workflow built, a connector built. The only thing we didn't have at that moment were credentials, but I did check the workflow myself because it's built into the platform. It's not some separate third party. It's all isolated into your own Azure environment or AWS, wherever you have it hosted. So it's your data.
So can this product be put into someone's business network or onto someone's business network? Can it actually go out and learn through existing data that's there? Or do you have to prompt it and then it goes to find it? So in other words, if I took this and put it on a customer who had, say, a big SharePoint repository now of all kinds of documents, does it only go out and look at that once I prompt it?
For safety, yes. You don't want AI to crawl a network or do anything that it shouldn't be doing without you knowing about it. Transparency is incredibly important when it comes to artificial
What he's
intelligence.
talking about is actually a very big point with artificial intelligence, right? I would never let it run wild and actually execute on actions that it recommends without governance by a human, right? Because AI could go do something and it's the right thing to do, but by executing on that, it could blow something up because there were probably 4 or 5 other things that needed to be done in preparation for that prior to it actually happening.
Exactly. And if you wouldn't want Tim looking at financial information, you wouldn't want Tim's agent looking at financial information. You wouldn't want Todd looking at help desk tickets.
So
Right.
can you isolate or protect those areas of information?
You can. It's all role-based access controlled. What the user has, the agent has a tier below.
So if I have a finance person, they have a finance role and they would have access to that data. But if they don't have the finance role because they're working in the warehouse doing packaging, they won't be able to access.
Yeah, so like operations that have access to operations, finance to finance, owners would have access to everything because ultimately you need eyes on all aspects to be able to make relevant business decisions.
Yeah, mistake that a lot of businesses make is let's just deploy a bunch of agents. And guess what? Now all of these secured environments, finance data or accounting information can be retrieved via an agent to somebody that doesn't need to know that information. There should be channels and certain things that your agent has. And this is why it's so important that agents are deployed as a thought partner to an employee and not an organizational agent that everybody has access to in a think tank.
Unlike Copilot. Everybody should have access to Copilot.
Yeah, but Copilot also adheres to that premise, right? Because Copilot only has access to the information an end user has access to, right? So like I can look up financial information, but Matt can't. You can look up financial information. We're owners of the business, but he doesn't have access to it, right? So it still adheres to those boundaries that you've created by how you've structured your data based upon need to know.
And additionally, you typically in an application would have an IT person set it up. This is something that's so simple that it really should be the decision maker setting it up. Because you don't want...
The person who knows the flow of whatever process you're trying to look at or evaluate or whatever is the ideal person to set it up, which in the past, that person who understood the process or procedure had to explain it to the tech person.
Right. I was talking actually to our accountant yesterday, and she was mentioning some PSA didn't adhere to actual processes. And they had to find a bunch of workarounds because it was built by an engineer, right? Engineers don't necessarily know the ins and outs of somebody's job. In this example, she had to create about 10 different sub-processes for what she was trying to accomplish that should have just been a single process.
Interesting.
So if that is given into the hands of the outcome owner, then we have simpler tasks being executed. It's going to be cheaper for everybody. It's going to consume less time, less energy. And then you can start thinking about what is the budget for an FTE.
So is it like having your own in-house programming team?
It can be if that's what you want it to be. Otherwise,
it's more than that.
It's more than that. It's you're not going to be seeing code flying everywhere, right? Code flying everywhere is dangerous. You don't want somebody accidentally generating malware and that's somewhere running in the void within your company, and then it gets executed, right?
And we've talked about that before. We have customers that call us and go, "Hey, I wrote some code in Claude and it doesn't work right. Can you help me implement it?"
Yeah, this is a whoever owns a process owns the agent that is able to assist with that process.
And the agent handles the coding.
Yep, the agent handles the coding, which shows up to the human as connectors or nicely formatted text.
So I can type into this product and I can say, I have a business problem, or I have a business need, or I have a process. Here's what the process is. Help me make it better.
Well, so now we're bleeding into the conversation of AI versus automation, right? Because yes, we're using artificial intelligence plus API endpoints to determine what the process should be based upon what outcome we're looking for, right? So our AI agent has access to all of our disparate information, right? So it can now correlate all that information into a single source, right? And then based upon live information within those systems, it can then correlate information from one system to another based upon X, right? And X is very relatable, right? That's like, I have a phone call that's being recorded, a ticket number is mentioned, I'm grabbing the ticket number. Right. I also have a ticket number in my ticketing system. I can now correlate the two together and then build on that, right?
Which is what you just mentioned, what we're working on for our customer service.
And then that dovetails then into automation, right? AI figures out what process should be built and then recommends a workflow, an automation workflow on how to accomplish what you're looking for, right? It may call AI throughout the workflow, like to Matt's example, if we have a new review, like on Google, right? It can contextualize what's being left in the review and then create a unique response. So it's not a pre-canned text, same thing every single time. So you're going from AI has created the workflow for you to be alerted for Google reviews, right? When a new Google review alert comes in, it's following an automation workflow process that when it gets to a certain point in that process, it then re-engages artificial intelligence to help you accomplish something, which in this case would be responding to a review.
And what I could do, or what the past has taught us as IT people is, oh, there's probably an application out there. And I could probably go out right now and find an application that would do this, right? Then I've taken yet another application and added it to my environment. That's where I see the huge benefit of this.
Well,
I don't have to keep stacking.
We see it all the time, not just with us because we deal with it as well, but so do our customers, right? You have a couple of requirements. This product offered may facilitate those requirements, but then it comes with 8,000 other options, right?
Don't use.
You can't just pay for the 3 or 4 or 5 things that you need. You need to pay for the full package. So that comes at a premium cost, right? This allows you to hone in on the specifics, right? And ignore the else, to where it's still going to cost you money, but that money is your time and effort versus paying someone else. And the difference is the outcome is exactly what you want, no more, no less, and not excess at a premium. And then later on, if you need additional things, right, you just go back and add process automation to accomplish those using artificial intelligence.
I can't tell you how many times I've overpaid for applications like that.
Oh, we've done it.
You get an app and there's this really cool feature that you must have and it's a huge benefit, and then 80% of the application you don't use.
I mean, in the last 10 years, how much money have we burnt for good reasons trying to accomplish something, but then at the end of the day, we figured out better means to accomplish that task in-house.
Right.
At that point, with just straight automation, right, without any AI intelligence on top of that. But then now it's running in-house with minimal requirements to maintain, and it just works.
So do you think that by doing this, Matt, we will be able to reduce our tools, our applications that we use now for various things?
So every business has a core application that drives their business. For example, an IT business has a ticketing system.
PSA,
right?
Yeah.
Or an RMA system. Or a system that allows you to control or manage devices. That's IT, right? Obviously accounting and things like that, right? You have your core silos where everything is stored, and that's essentially what they are. They're application silos. What this does is it prevents the need for you to either hire somebody to create a custom application for you, or purchase an application that's already built that may not fit your company or your business other than one single feature.
And when you buy those applications, one of the biggest things that's a problem is that application coming into your environment and talking to those core applications you just referenced, right? These are the cores of my business. They can't go anywhere. They have to stay. I use 80% of those applications, but I want to bring something in new that's able to relate with all of them. That's always very hard to do.
Yeah. So to answer your question, you have your core applications, right? This prevents the need for additional add-on applications. You don't need peripheral applications to help somebody perform X task.
Here's a good example, right? Zapier. Everyone knows what Zapier, at least in IT, everyone knows what Zapier is, right? Zapier is a tool that people can use that integrates to disparate information, right? But it is a manual automation creation process, right? So you can link this system to this system, that type of thing, right? This replaces that with artificial intelligence.
It does.
Right? It has the same outcome. So in lieu of having to...
And Zapier takes some tech knowledge.
It takes, trust me, I've used Zapier a lot, right? And I don't like it as much as like Microsoft Power Automate or like Roost. And now what we've dubbed Iris, right? Which is the name of the AI Toolkit, which is ultimately a toolkit that we're building, right? You don't need that middleware, right? Because maybe you have different pieces of middleware to connect and bridge information together, because Zapier doesn't have everything. But something like this, or something that a business builds in-house, that is ultimately what the end goal is, right? It's your traffic cop. You have 18 different roads terminating on 18 different stoplights, and you have someone doing this in the middle. Right. It replaces the need for multiple traffic cops.
So it also sounds like this toolkit can help me analyze how my data flows from where to where. So in other words, could I use it for something like monitoring and understanding where data moves so that for security reasons?
Yeah, of course. And you could centralize it there as well. You can, it has a built-in storage system using a proprietary flavor that we build in-house that allows you to immediately synapse data back to, for example, you and I looked at it yesterday, right? I showed you how I could just retrieve ticket information just by saying, hey, can you go get me this ticket about this? Didn't add a ticket number, didn't do anything else that you would send a Teams member, hey, look at this ticket. It retrieved everything about it, gave recommended next steps, all in one step, and it databased that information so we could retrieve it later.
Yeah, so going back to the original topic of disparate information everywhere, this is ultimately the reason why these types of solutions exist, right? Let's take our business, for example, right? Any and every MSP in existence, always one of the biggest issues is documentation maintenance, right? Because you have documentation in this system over here, and documentation in this system over here, and documentation in this system over here. Maybe you have stuff in SharePoint, right? So for forever, right, we've used different tools to store documentation. And you can't get away from certain things just because that's how that technology works. But 2 years ago, 3, 4 years, I don't remember. We started in SharePoint. Well, when I came to work with Stability Networks, we were in SharePoint for documentation, right? But it was an on-premise version of SharePoint with very limited capabilities. Now you have SharePoint Online, right? And something that we quickly realized with Copilot is that utilizing Copilot to address problems that you may have, and then once it responds with information that's actionable, checking the source to making sure that the source is actually what you're looking for and not something off cuff, right? But our SharePoint documentation system is a living documentation, meaning since it's live and everyone has access to it and it's editable for revisions with approval, right? If someone is doing something inside of Copilot and they're working in some other system, like a customer system, and there's conflict between what is being seen in the system and what's in like an SOP or a process, right? Something's changed on the system, right? Which then means that the documentation source needs to be updated to reflect the change, right? So that's living documentation to me. If you are dealing with information on the day-to-day, which is what's in SharePoint for us, there is no hygiene cycle, right? There is no, I need to go through all SOPs and procedures every 6 months or annually, right? Just because what's being used at any given time
is live.
And if something changes, it is then updated to reflect those changes.
The ultimate way to update.
So how do you do that in all your disparate systems, right? Enter Iris, these types of solutions, because I can tie into our ticketing system. I can tie into our documentation system. I can tie into SharePoint, right?
Our management and monitoring system.
Management and monitoring ticketing system, right? And now I can correlate everything between. So let's say a client calls or we get a P1 alert for something down at a client, right? Well, based upon the alert that comes in, I can look everywhere. I can look in past tickets that may have the same alert. I can look in SharePoint. I can look in documentation. I can look in PSA's knowledge base. I can look at RMM's knowledge base, right? And then I can create a weighting system of relevancy, right? Well, this is a 7 out of 10, 10 being perfect match. This is exactly what you're looking for. And 7 being like, well, it kind of is related, but I need you to kind of review it to ensure that what I'm giving you actually correlates to what you're seeing, right? Well, now you can have a ticket that as we receive it, it now is automatically updated with knowledge bases from different systems and recommendations on how to proceed, right? So what if we're dealing with a customer's line of business application that never has issues, but we have documentation on it, but the documentation is 2 years old because no one's needed to touch that documentation since its inception.
Which is so common.
It's very common, especially with line of business applications. Less with Microsoft and big name things like QuickBooks and et cetera, right? But like your Dentex for dentists or your file cabinet for CPAs, right? Things typically have a tendency to work until they don't. And that's typically because something on the system changed. Maybe there was a security update or a system update or the vendor updated something on their side that doesn't reflect what our documentation says compared to what our engineers are now dealing with.
And it's almost impossible to keep track of.
It's almost impossible to keep track, right? So now the engineer has been given a couple of steps to follow, right? But now because the SOP is incorrect, because something's changed over here, now they're engaging vendor support, right? And vendor support is like, oh yeah, well, we made your revision update here, blah, blah, change this to that. This is the issue you're running into. Here's information to the new process, right? And then we have the new process provided by the vendor, but we also have the resolution in our ticketing system. So if resolution does not match existing knowledge base, then take resolution plus vendor documentation, create approval process to update disparate information in some random knowledge base. And once approved, now that information is up to date. So instead of having to maintain a cadence for documentation hygiene, anytime you touch documentation, it's looking to see if this is the most relevant method to accomplish the task you're looking for. And if it's not, it's taking the information being provided to now update that for the next person to see it.
That's huge. That's,
right? And that's
huge
kind
for
of
MSVPs or any business, really.
That can fit into any business vertical, small and large, right? Because everyone has the same issue, which boils down to context decay.
Sure.
You forget over time conversations that have been had, decisions that have been made, processes created, procedures that are meant to be followed, right? But now you've created a living, breathing thing almost, right? Where it just grows out with your business instead of you continuously layering stuff to grow up, right? And to me, that is, we talk about symptoms and root causes so much in our industry, right? Like, don't deal with the symptom of the problem, figure out what the root cause of the problem is and fix that. Because if you deal with the symptom, you're just ultimately band-aiding things over time until they break again. And the more bandages you throw on, the more painful it is as you rip each one of those band-aids off.
As we get busier and busier as a business, we tend to use more and more band-aids.
More and more band-aids, right?
As opposed to fixes.
So like if you look at symptoms and root cause, right, I would argue that there's an actual root cause to the root cause, and that is context decay, because over time you forget things. Oh, I saw this before 3 years ago and I solved it this way. Yep. But 3 years later, you don't remember that exactly that. You may be like, oh, I dealt with this. What did I do? I can't remember.
Because we had that conversation. Didn't a few years ago we do this and this, and we would have to sit there and try to remember what we did and to take action on it. And then you make 2 or 3 mistakes because you didn't know exactly what you did.
Or you go down the path of, okay, I don't remember what I did, so I'm going to start at top level and go test, not realizing that the first 6 tests you did in the past, which provided 0 results. So you just spent an hour, 2 hours troubleshooting something that you've done in the past instead of skipping the first 6 steps and going to, this provides some form of context or result that I can actually use to further troubleshoot something, right? And that to me is what artificial intelligence is going to be used in business, right? Because it's not, this methodology of using AI to prevent context decay isn't going to replace people.
It's an enhancement.
It's an enhancement to those people, because now the whole premise of context decay is you just waste a shitload of time for no reason, reinventing the same wheel over and over again because you forgot you already built a good wheel, right? This allows you to recoup all of that wasted time and make relevant decisions based upon past precedents of information that you have created.
You know, I didn't think about this until now, but it's always been an issue for me in business. I was always worried about losing that one employee. Right. There's that one person who
they're the bottleneck.
They are. Yes. But they hold so much knowledge.
Yep.
Right. They hold so much knowledge as a business owner. You go, oh, I can't afford to lose that person because what if they leave me? What if something happens to them? I can't afford to lose them because they hold all this knowledge. This is a much smarter repository.
What you ultimately create is you create a intelligent turnover binder. Right. Because back in the day, right. Well, like, especially when I was in the military, the Marine Corps, right. You come into a job, right. And that job is usually going to last for about 3 years. Right. And then you're going to get orders somewhere else and you're going to go step into a similar job, but each one is unique. Right. So if you maintained a certain billet, right, like as an NCO or a staff NCO in the military, right, you're expected to maintain your billet responsibilities to the extent to where if you get shipped off tomorrow into a combat and you unfortunately pass away, right? Someone that comes in after you can pick up exactly where you were because they knew step by step your processes and procedures and how to execute on that job in that specific billet where you're stationed at that time, right? That replaces the 3-ring binders that are this thick with operational procedures on accomplishing a specific billet and makes it searchable, right?
Searchable, updatable,
right?
Relatable.
So to me, like, that's what I want. Like here's an example, right? So the operations team was dealing with an issue Saturday night, right? And Mac took charge of this issue and led the team to a resolution, right? But when, and we did this in Microsoft Teams, so this is Copilot relatable. We created a group chat around 8 or 9 p.m. on Saturday night. I don't remember what time it was.
8:27.
8:27. Well, you should know you created the chat, right? So you messaged Matt and I, who, based upon conversations previously in that day, were aware there was an issue, but we understood that this was the issue and that we were sending engineers on site to deal with this specifically. Well, it turned out that wasn't the issue. That was part of it, but that was a Band-Aid, according to our eyes, as to what the root cause of the issue was. So now we have 3 senior level engineers on site, a network engineer, client success manager, operations manager, CTO, sales rep in a single chat, right? The very first thing I asked when you created a chat was, everyone, spill the tea. What is going on? What's happened? What's been done? What have you tried? What's failed? What's worked? What are you seeing? So the next thing you know, it's just vomit from everyone that has already put their hands into the pot dealing with things, where we're getting Wireshark PCAPs from network issues, looking at things with DHCP and what's blocking this and what's doing that. And
when you have 10 plus people in a chat, they're hammering.
It's literally the vomit comment. It's just within the first minute, you have so much information being thrown at you, from screenshots to we tried this failed. We now think it's this. Here's Wireshark PCAPs to text logs, all these types of things, right? So Matt did what he should do, right? He took charge of the conversation, and I'm just sitting there kind of watching the back end. And I start going through logs, and I start opening up PCAPs. And we all know the issue was related to a specific software protocol, which is DHCP, right? And why was DHCP failing?
I thought DNS was always the problem.
DNS is always the problem, right? So we knew it was DHCP, right? But it didn't make sense as to why there was a DHCP issue, because DHCP kind of just works or it doesn't work. And if it doesn't work, something is intercepting it in between. Well, what's intercepting it, right? So we started pulling all these logs. I just kind of sat in the back and I asked Copilot, hey, this is the issue we're dealing with. This is the topology I'm dealing with. I'm dealing with this type of firewall. I have these switches in the core. I have these switches, on the edge. I'm dealing with access points. I'm using DHCP relay from the firewall to the server. This is what I see, right? And within about 5 minutes, without me having to look at logs and go into various systems to validate things that I'm being told, right? Looking at PCAPs, trying to identify where the specific failure point is, right? Copilot found it. Didn't know where the problem lived specifically, but it just knew that the acknowledgement from the DHCP request was never getting back to the client, right? Now, high level, right? We here know what DORA stands for, right? When you ask for an IP from a DHCP server, discover, offer, request, acknowledge, right? Well, what it turned out being was the switches that were in the core have some bug in them, right? Because when you enable a technology called DHCP snooping, which prevents rogue DHCP servers from being put on your network, right? DHCP snooping will shun and discard any traffic on the offer statement. The second step coming from a DHCP server back to the endpoint. This was discarding the acknowledge, which I've never seen before. So I can only assume it's firmware related, which further was proved later because if you reboot the switches, it's fine for about a week and then the problem resurfaces, right? So those switches are being replaced, obviously, step one, right? But context decay also involves the mindset of you have all this information that people have in their head of things that they've done, but Matt and I coming in after the fact, now we have to get caught up.
Right.
Right.
And that was a tremendous uphill climb in the past.
If we
reading
100%, right? So like time to resolution for this incident was about an hour and a half because there were some other things that needed to be done, right? To ensure that after we made some changes, it worked, right? While we wait for replacement switches to come in. But going through, I mean, I don't know how quickly you do it. For me to go through 3 or 4 PCAPs, you know, multiple event logs of things being seen on a DHCP server perspective and then client perspective, right? Looking at switch logs, especially switch logs from a non-centrally managed switch, and then looking at the rest of the logs from the rest of the network topology, right? It probably would take me 45 minutes to go through everything.
Oh, yeah.
Right? This is kind of the mindset, right? Context decay allows you to be, let me rephrase that. Context decay results in your inability to make quick decisions because you don't have all the facts, right?
And you're not able to correlate.
Right? It's the same concept as like Copilot in Microsoft Teams. Like if there's an active meeting and you join late, right?
Yeah.
It removes
It'll summarize
context
for you.
decay because the first thing you do joining a meeting late is it asks you if you would have an AI summary of what's transpired so far. Because I've been in meetings before where I jump in late and I'm just like, duh.
Yeah.
Like, what's going on, guys? What are we talking about, right? To where I don't need that anymore because I can just sit in the background and I have an AI summary. And then if a decision's made, I can go into Copilot during the meeting and say, why was this decision made? What was discussed? So I can either agree with the decision or maybe I have additional information to provide and we can revisit that decision because they were unaware of something
But you
that
don't
I'm
have
providing.
to waste everybody else's time coming up to speed. You can do it with the.
Here's a perfect example, right? So going back to the issue that we dealt with Saturday, right? You don't need, you yourself, the creator of the chat, right? As operations manager, don't need to be like, hey, what's going on? What's the status? What are we doing? Right? Because all you have to do is open up Copilot and say, what's the latest update? What have we tried? What does it look like the issue is? Right? And now you have all this information that has been aggregated once it's been resolved, right? What did I do? Create an after action report.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is always was something that IT people don't want to do. It takes time. It's paperwork. It's like a cop filing paperwork after an arrest.
Ultimately, Saturday occurred because we had weird communication issues. No direct pinpoint as to what was going on, but we had communication issues, missed phone calls, callbacks, people already working on things, that kind of stuff, right? Well, that warrants an SOP. Mm-hmm. And that is the SOP that we built the other day that isn't unique to this incident.
Yeah, it spreads across.
It spreads across our entire organization, right? When dealing with issues with the client at a severe or critical priority level, these are the steps that must be followed and not deviated. And we've had these things in the past, right? But there's always the new employee that comes in and is not aware of things that have happened prior to their join date of the organization. How do you get them caught up as quickly as possible?
The legwork and documentation involved in documenting processes like this and creating SOPs has been avoided for years. People don't like that. They don't like doing the paperwork. There's an incident that happens, and this isn't just MSPs with technical things. It's all businesses. And then that's somebody who's going to write up some documentation. Okay, you do that, and it just doesn't get done.
Well, here's the cool thing, right? From our operations leadership meeting the other day, right? We identified a need for another SOP, which was created at the time. But during that creation process, using the context of what was discussed in the meeting, I requested that, hey, Copilot, I don't say, hey, Copilot, that's a little weird. I said,
hey, baby.
I want to create an SOP based upon this section of the meeting. Do I have any existing SOPs or procedures that are similar or would directly conflict with what we discussed? It went out, looked at our 1,000+ SOPs and processes and said, hey, there is not an SOP like this. Would you like me to create it? Absolutely. Create away. But I do it for a specific reason, right? Because we can make decisions as leaders, but the context decay that we suffer from is we forget what decisions we've already made that have already been documented as an SOP or process.
True.
So why not, during the creation process of a new SOP, why would you not look at all your different knowledge sources to see if you have anything that's relatable or similar?
In the past, because it just wasn't available.
It wasn't available.
You couldn't make that good logical decision.
Imagine this, okay? So an SOP is a breathing, living organism within an organization, right? What happens when the human body works out? They develop more blood veins throughout their muscles, right? Mm-hmm. And those blood veins take course, they shape. Well, what's the point of an SOP if it stays static? If it stays stagnant, if nobody's following it, nobody's reading it?
Well, I can tell you.
If no one knows it exists.
Nobody knows it exists.
I can tell you from past experience, it becomes a dead item living somewhere on a network or file server that no one ever accesses anymore. And it's a dead document. Someone 7 years later goes, why are we keeping that?
Yep. And nobody's working out, so to say, the SOP. Nobody's allowing it to shape further. It's not open-ended. It's not ready to be modified or altered when edge cases happen, when something doesn't work now because somebody changed something.
Well, that goes back to the whole premise of context decay and
Precisely.
living documentation, right? Out of sight, out of mind, you forget, right? How much time does it take? Documentation hygiene is horrible across all industries, not because people don't want to do it because it takes time, right? They don't think about the next person down the line. They think about, what do I need to do next? I don't have time to update this, right? Or maybe updating it's not a part of a process that I'm currently doing, right? So take the human aspect in this example out completely. Use artificial intelligence to do it, right? It's your thought partner. It's an extension of you. It's supposed to reduce your overhead and allow you to operate more seamlessly in your job role.
We were talking yesterday, the three of us, about this topic, and somebody said something to the degree of, it's like having a special department for your business that is full of just highly intelligent people that know about your business and can develop and create and fix processes and issues in your business.
Well, think about it like this, right?
It's like a team.
Yeah. Think about this. Not everyone can afford a board of directors, right?
Right.
Very costly to have a board of directors, right? Typically only larger organizations or those governed by regulatory requirement that requires something of that nature have board of directors, right? Why couldn't you, if you are a CPA, right? If your business is a CPA, why couldn't you have something like Copilot or Iris use the living documentation that is provided by that regulatory body, the IRS, the SEC, local, state, federal tax regulations, right? Because they change
Constantly.
up to date over and over and over, right? You get hallucinations in AI because you're using a very broad spectrum of information instead of honing in on the specifics that you're looking for, right? So why would I be looking at things? There's reasons why, from memory, you have to maintain for 3 years. So like in 2026, you'd be looking at 23, 24, and 25 tax code, right? But 27, it'd be 24, 25, 26. Right. So why wouldn't you use a system that had the knowledge based upon the tax year that someone filed something in to go look at that specific year's requirements to ensure that it adheres to that, right? Because now you have
most valuable data.
You have information aggregated through all your disparate systems, right? Why wouldn't you include agents that each specialize in something, right? For us, right, maybe it would be, we do a lot of stuff. We'd have an IRS agent. We'd have a HIPAA agent, a PCI agent, right? A NIST agent, a CIS agent. All these little acronyms are all related to security, right? And regulatory requirements that, depending on what vertical of business you're in, you, whether you know it or not, are expected to adhere to, right? So I have all my information from all my systems, but now I have all these external entities that are specialists in specific things that I deal with, that now, based upon what I'm looking for, it's accessing my own information, but also accessing what I need to adhere to, the expert. And now I can go and ask and try to make better business decisions that abide by regulation, adhere to internal processes and procedures.
That's why you call it your thought partner.
That is why I call artificial intelligence my thought partner, right? Because that's what it really is doing, right? When you build an agentic agent using Iris or whatever, right? That really, it's you, right? You're building a reflection of you, but the difference is you're building a reflection of you that doesn't eat, sleep, poop, any of the stuff that we do as humans, right? I see you laughing at poop. Anything that we do as humans, right? But more importantly, it removes all bias.
Yeah.
It takes away any of your preconceived notions that you may have to where something comes across. Yeah, your own cognitive bias. Something comes across your table. Oh, I've seen this before. It has to be this. Well, maybe if there's one little thing different about this, but you've already moved on to it's nothing over here because I've seen it before. It's now this. Whereas artificial intelligence is not going to skip over that one attribute or identifier or whatever it is. It's going to take that into its reasoning process to then provide a result to you.
So can I just take Iris and put it into my business? Is it a replacement for Copilot? Is this like a plug and play thing?
It can be an enhancement to Copilot, or it can reach things that Copilot may not have immediate access to. But ultimately, Copilot itself in a business that already has Microsoft 365 is, like you said, it's cohesive to the information that's already in Microsoft 365, right?
Mm-hmm. To me, it's a maturity level.
Yep.
It's a maturity level, right? You have to grow up. You have to grow into AI. You don't just throw something at the wall and hope it sticks, right? To me, in-house AI development is a mature practice. It means that your employees understand generally how to use it, various use cases. There are processes and procedures already developed surrounding it.
So I could take Iris, I can put it in my business, but just like anything or any AI model, I have to train it on my business. It has to learn.
More so, you have to train your people on how to use artificial intelligence. Now, we built into Iris that capability on how to train based upon learning who you are, your role, your job title, and all that.
So Iris has what's called the user memory and personality alignment system, which is when it comes to you, first thing, it comes to you and says, hey, Josh, I'd like to get to know a little bit about you. What does your typical day look like, right? Mm-hmm. So it comes to you, asks you what you need as a blank slate, just a single agent, and it gets to know you on a personal level, on a business level, and then it starts shaping itself in a way that it knows that it can help you. Because let's face it, artificial intelligence is a form of intelligence, whether it's a containerized database just giving you fancy information or not, it is intelligence. Mm-hmm. It's crafted. It will shape itself in a way where it knows it may be able to predict what you're going to be doing that day. It may know what systems you work within. That's the difference between Copilot and Iris or advanced AI systems is they're agentic. It's not an information retrieval system.
Correct.
It's a task implementation system and a process regulatory system.
So digressing, Iris to me is you've reached a certain level of maturity in your business, right? Iris can, but shouldn't be necessarily used to create the information, it uses itself, right? If I was a day zero business, right? Day one, I would implement Copilot, especially if I was Microsoft 365, right? Because through meetings, through document creation by individuals within your business, right? Ultimately, you're building out the foundation of knowledge, right? And the more you build, the smarter it gets. And the more you build, the easier it is to create additional relatable things, right? So if I was a business that was interested in artificial intelligence, and I was in Microsoft 365's ecosystem, I would be purchasing Copilot licenses for any decision maker, specifically any decision maker just to start, right? Because that's the buy off, right? Decision makers typically have employees underneath of them, right? That to me is the buy off, because you're in charge of operations, right? AI development, we have project management, marketing, this, that, and the other, right? We have all these different places where there's information generation, right? Allowing people to generate information off existing information to fit their use case within their own business unit furthers the information that is created and is accessible by your employees, right? It ties in everywhere, right? So to me,
one employee can make the whole environment better.
Copilot is the quickest. It's the quickest means to an end from an entry perspective into utilizing thought-based AI within an organization. To Matt's point, agentic is completely different, right? It takes part of that thought piece, but it also has the automation and process piece built into it, right? You can't automate without the processes. So it's cart before horse mentality, right? So the quickest means to create the processes and procedures is by using your own information to generate things that miss. Copilot, do I have a process for this? Right? You don't. Okay. Now you hold a meeting to discuss what the process should look like with your business unit leaders, right? So they can all have their input. Process solidified. Processes, now Copilot has access to it, right? You build, right? It's like watching my kid put Legos together, right? Step one, find these pieces, put this together, right? Step two, put these pieces together, right? You're putting the pieces to the puzzle together to create the result that you want, right? But it never ends really, because you always identify new issues, especially as you grow, right? We as a business have been pretty stable, right? The last 5 years with processes and procedures. Then you get a client in that has different expectations and different requirements that you need to facilitate. And while your processes and procedures work great for everything, now you're being forced to rethink strategy and grow with new things coming in, which can be a little chaotic at times, but at the end of the day, once you get through it, now you've revised your methodology, and now you can actually deal with more that you couldn't deal with previously.
So where can I learn more about this product?
Our product, Iris.
Have you published anything yet?
No, Iris is top secret. We shouldn't have talked about it.
Top secret.
Skunk Works.
Top secret.
Don't sue me, Lockheed.
For sure.
But it's so there are certain things. Obviously, everything that we do is in-house first, right? So while it's up, running, and works, it probably will not be available for at least 6 months, right?
When do we plan to start beta testing?
So if I go into a little bit of a development talk, all right, so we have a development environment. I just released the staging environment in which I can invite anybody in the company right now. That could be the beta environment, but just know that it's going to be rapidly changing as development, as CI/CD cycles start coming in and changes start being implemented, improvements. The advantage, though, of that is that we can have direct interface directly with, the developer team that's building it. Hey, this doesn't do this for me.
I think that's a huge advantage. And for me, as a business owner, I'm concerned about losing time. right? So is there value in taking a tool like this, a toolkit like this, and beginning to use it? Because like you said, context decay, right?
Yep.
Every single day, how much context do we add to the pile? So for me, it's exciting to be able to have something that can correlate all these different pieces of our business.
I've learned dealing with technologies like this, through past errors of my own ways and expectations of individuals, is that if you give someone something to use and it doesn't work how they want it to work, they're not going to use it again. They're going to move on, right? So part of the development process that we're going to go through internally is to ensure how we think this tool, back to what he said, right? We're a managed service provider, thinking like people that work at a managed service provider, right? So let's solidify how it operates for us, get ourselves to actually bite off on the product,
Yes.
right? With continuous use, right? You're looking for continuous engagement over time, not one shot. This doesn't work, move on back to my old processes and ways. Because once that's done, then you can start doing proof of concepts in other business verticals, right? Because each different business vertical and each different methodology that businesses run just adds additional input, right? That's why, like, hey, Claude source code was disclosed. Okay, great. Go build your own Claude. It's not the source code necessarily that makes Claude. It's the training of their LLMs that use the source code, right? Oh, Google Chrome source code was disclosed. Great. Go build a Google. Good luck.
And you know what's funny about that is even if you build your own Claude, you're still going to be using their models, which is still paying Anthropic.
Yeah.
So here's where Iris wasn't built with hard-coded, hey, you're an MSP agentic system. But as I started coupling connectors together, it started recognizing that, hey, Stability Networks is an MSP.
Yep.
And every time I ask it advice, it's giving me MSP advice.
Yep.
Every time I ask about something, it's like, hey, this correlates to something you said earlier, and this fits well in your MSP architecture, right? I didn't tell it that I was. It figured it out because it knows that the certain applications it has access to.
It correlates context.
Exactly.
Based upon
learning about your business.
Right. So if you were in an accounting firm, it would eventually realize, okay, these are accounting applications. You're a CPA. Okay. So how can I better find anomalies that you may be already looking for?
Well, and that's my thing. What's the benefit of literally this system, even if you didn't use it for anything else, coming in, asking questions to each one of your employee about their job and recording just that data? Even if you used it for that just microcosm of information, how valuable is that alone? Your employees, how do they think about their job? What do they think they actually do? Does it match their job roles and responsibilities and description? That's a huge part of and that's just the tip of the iceberg.
Yep.
You know, I love you because I didn't even think about that use case, but you're 100% correct. Right.
That's a product in and of itself.
That is, well, we need to probably have some sidebar conversations.
Yeah.
The three of us on how to do that, because we can expose the knowledge, right, without the workflow processes, right? Just from the perspective of, let's integrate into WebEx, let's integrate into Meraki, Halo PSA, Hoodoo, all HubSpot, blah, 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 because now at least it has access to all the information. So when you get to the actual stage of, okay, now we're going to release the agentic piece of that includes workflow automation and processes, it's already trained on what every single person does and already knows how they operate. That actually, to be quite honest, that could be like a phase one of a deployment anywhere.
Yeah.
Right.
And you're getting instant value.
You don't get access to the agentic aspect of this platform until this platform has learned every aspect of your business and how you actually operate, because that in its own is disparate from the information that's individuals within your business or business unit leaders.
So Steve Jobs, right? He had this theory that you don't build a product with all the fancy features and everything that you think would be cool in a product for humans. you build a product that's easy for humans to grasp, understand, knowledge, they can build their own, adopt quickly. Thank you. And you hand a person an iPhone, right?
I was going to go right there to the iPhone, Android.
They've never seen any other phone except for a keyboard phone, right? Or whatever those were. T9,
Motorola Razr flip phone.
Yep. So
Sidekick.
It was a black.
You hand somebody an iPhone and they immediately know how to use it. Why? Because it's so intuitive that it already matches the way that we think.
Well, I mean, that's why I jumped ship. I was an Android enthusiast for years, but I was an enthusiast because I could kind of tinker with it and do things to it.
Techie things.
I'd blow it up and then have to reload the bootloader or something, right? And then one day I was just like, I'm tired of messing with this. I just want something that like always works. I don't have to deal with it, blah, blah, blah. And then I jumped over to iPhone. And then to me, that's really it's a perfect example, right? Because you have people that still like to tinker, and you have people that just want to be productive, and they don't want the fluff. They just want something that works, right? So where do you want to end up?
And it's so funny too, because people don't necessarily know how to make decisions for themselves always. Kind of throwing my mother-in-law under the bus here.
Uh-oh.
If she sees this, I'm sorry. But
he loves you to move. He's your favorite too.
We've been telling you to move to iPhone for years, right? Because you're struggling with your Android. It's a tough thing to learn. You got to enhance the size of the screen a little bit. But you've learned it, right, over the course of years, when you could have just used an iPhone and immediately understood. So it would have been intuitive and easy.
What you're telling me, is that the design principle of Iris?
It's the design principle of Iris. When you receive Iris, you receive a familiar. Everybody's used a text system or a chat interface, right? It's a chat interface. It comes to you first. Actually, you don't have to ask it something and then it responds. No, it instantiates a mode called learn mode, and it only is ever active during the first conversation. Learn mode, based on your name, based on just what the business context was previously with other people, will ask you, "Hey, Josh, tell me about yourself." And it's not a pre-canned text. It's the AI model already building context on you, and it'll ask you a series of questions. And it'll actually...
they're not the same questions.
And they're not the same questions.
They're based on you.
And it's not guided like, hey, fill this box, fill this box, fill this box. No.
Which would be a normal process in a business if you want to do evaluate.
Well, even further, right? Think about it from this perspective, right? If you have a system like this integrated into Microsoft 365, right? It knows who it's talking to and can correlate to the end user, right? So here's my account in Microsoft 365. I am the chief technology officer. These are the people that work underneath me, right? So it instantly, right off the bat, knows you work for Stability Networks, you're the chief technology officer, you have subordinates underneath you, right? What does your average day look like? What do you do? Where do you feel like you waste the most time? Where do you feel like you get more time back to focus on certain areas?
If there were a way to help you, what would be that day? What takes you the longest amount of time? What process in your day? All of those things and gathering that. How powerful is that? This is a business evaluation tool that tells you things you would never get to know about your employees. And then, to your point, context, right? It keeps that context live and relevant and in front of you, helping you make the best business decisions.
Yeah, this isn't just about AI. It's about your company, your business. How does it naturally flow? Who's involved? Why is this happening? Are there edge cases that just haven't even been addressed?
Where are your bottlenecks?
Where are your
hangups? What problems are you dealing with right now?
That's using AI at a different level in a business.
Oh yeah,
that's a lower level. That's not just the tip of the iceberg to help me write emails or fix my spreadsheet.
Well, I look at artificial intelligence strictly from a business intelligence perspective. I want to be able to make better decisions to grow a business based upon the information I already have.
And I don't want to repeat my mistakes.
And I don't repeat my mistakes. So like at an executive or owner level, you have the keys to the castle for all aspects of information, right? But maybe you're a tier 2 engineer on a help desk and all you need is this subset, right? Now you have access to that as well. And your periphery, your blinders are back on, right? To where when you're manually doing things, you're like this, right? Instead of focusing directly on the task you're trying to accomplish, right? And if you have past precedent and additional context to add to that decision, right, you can go straight forward between A and B.
And
right?
make it
Instead
happen
of
so much quicker.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's where the world is speeding up. Everything we're doing as businesses and people is speeding up. And AI is right behind us, pushing us forward faster and faster. Think about it. We used to have Google, right? And you'd have people, maybe you were having a discussion in a room or something, and there was always somebody that was Googling. Well, now it's instant information. So for you to not do anything in your business to change the way you do business, you're going to be left behind. Everybody else is moving at Mach
Well,
speed.
so in a past podcast, I made a statement which still stands true, right? Artificial intelligence, the vast majority of artificial intelligence is not going to be a people replacer, right? But the people that learn how to use artificial intelligence in their day-to-day will replace you, right? Don't be left behind.
Yep. Don't be that business that doesn't jump on the train. Look at history. Look at what history of businesses has taught us. Google is where they are because they jumped on a train in the beginning and realized the value of marketing and data collection specifically, right? You can name hundreds, thousands of other businesses that have done the same thing. Yeah. If you're concerned about your business, if you want to have AI as a thought partner, a thought leader, a director, a correlator, whatever you want, if you're interested in AI and how that can affect your business, contact us. Let us know. We're here to help you. You can find us on the internet at www.stabilitynetworks.com. You can find us on Spotify, YouTube. And if you're on there now when you're watching us, do us a favor, like and subscribe. It really helps us, keeps us going. And tech guys, we love a pat on the back every once in a while. So thanks everybody for being here today. Josh, appreciate all the information. Again, Josh has a great article out about context. Read it. It's super valuable to business. Matt, thanks for being here. We appreciate your hard work. I want to hear more about Iris. I want to release more about Iris. I want to tell other people how cool it is. And trust me, all the stuff that's going on in the back, it's a mind blower. It's a first time in the industry. It's a game changer. So thank you for joining us today on Why It Matters. And we hope you got something out of it with us. Have a great day. Thanks for listening to Why It Matters. If today's conversation opened your eyes or gave you something real to think about, share this episode with a business owner or friend who may need it. And if you want more insights on how to make technology actually work for your business, subscribe and follow us for upcoming episodes. And until next time, take care of your tech and it will take care of you.